There is a kind of domestic violence that hides in plain sight, a kind that wears a badge or a robe or a title, a kind that signs warrants by day and breaks spirits by night, a kind that knows the law so well it can bend it into a cage. This is the violence no one wants to name, the violence committed by people who hold power. Law enforcement officers, judges, district attorneys, defense lawyers, correction staff, probation officers, and others who know the system from the inside. When the abuser is in the system or works for the system, the survivor is not just fighting one person. They are fighting the architecture of authority itself. So today we're going to speak the truth that so many survivors have been forced to swallow. Most people imagine domestic violence as a private tragedy, but when the abuser is someone with institutional power, the violence becomes publicly protected. These abusers know how to write reports, how to avoid leaving evidence, how to manipulate narratives, how to intimidate without leaving marks, how to discredit a survivor, how to weaponize procedure, and how to hide behind professional reputation. They know which officers will look the other way. They know which judge will understand. They know which prosecutors will decline to file. And they know how to make a survivor look unstable, dramatic, or vindictive. And the survivor knows that too. This is not just domestic violence. This is institutionalized coercive control. Domestic violence always involves power, but when the abuser already holds power, the scale tilts from the survivor even before the survivor even speaks. They control the narrative. A police officer can say she's hysterical. A judge can say he's unstable. A prosecutor can say there's no case here. A defense attorney can say she's lying to gain the advantage. And the world listens because society is trained to trust uniforms, titles, and authority. They know how to avoid evidence. These abusers understand what counts as admissible, what leaves a trail, what can be dismissed as mutual conflict, what can be reframed as self defense, what can be blamed on the survivor. They know how to keep the violence invisible. They know the weak spots in the system. They know which officers won't take a report seriously, which clerks will lose paperwork, which judges are biased, which prosecutors are overloaded, which loopholes always delay, which tactics intimidate survivors into silence. They know how to make the survivor feel like reporting is pointless. They can weaponize their reputation. A respected officer, a well-known attorney, a judge with decades on the bench. People say he would never do that. She must be over-exaggerating. He's a good man. She's trying to ruin his career. The survivor becomes the villain in their own story. When the abuser holds institutional power, the survivor is trapped in a double-layered cage. Fear of not being believed. Survivors often say, "Who will believe me over a cop? How do I report a judge to a judge? What happens if the DA is the one hurting me? What if the officer taking my statement is his friend?" This fear is not paranoia. It is lived experience. And then there is fear of retaliation. Retaliation can look like traffic stops, welfare checks, anonymous reports, custody interference, professional sabotage, legal intimidation, threats of arrest, threats of institutionalization. The survivor learns that the abuser doesn't need fists when they have forms, badges, and signatures. Fear of losing children. A parent who works in the system can say, I know the judge. I know the guardian ad litem. I know how to make you look unfit. And the survivor knows that sometimes that is enough. Fear of being painted as the problem. Abusers in power often flip the script. She's unstable. He's aggressive. She's vindictive. He's mentally ill. She's trying to ruin my career. And because they speak the language of authority, their lies sound like truth. This is where the story widens, though, because the survivor is not just fighting the abuser, they are fighting the system that protects them. Law enforcement bias. Officers may refuse to take reports, minimize the situation, side with their colleague, warn the abuser privately, treat the survivor as the aggressor, discourage filing charges. The blue wall becomes the barrier to safety. Prosecutorial discretion. A DA can decline to file, delay the case, downgrade charges, claim insufficient evidence, quietly bury the file, and the survivor has no recourse. Judicial bias. A judge may dismiss the survivor's concern, deny protective orders, grant custody to the abuser, question the survivor's credibility, and prioritize the abuser's career over the survivor's safety. The courtroom becomes another battlefield. Professional networks. These abusers are protected by colleagues, unions, professional associations, political alliances, community reputation. Survivors often say, it felt like I was reporting him to his friends. The psychological toll. Living under a system that protects the abuser. This kind of abuse creates a unique trauma. Institutional betrayal. The survivor trusted the system. The system sided with the abuser. This betrayal cuts deeper than the violence itself. Chronic hypervigilance. Survivors live with fear of retaliation, fear of surveillance, fear of legal manipulation, fear of losing children, fear of being arrested, fear of being disbelieved. The trauma becomes environmental. Silencing through power. Survivors often stop reporting because they've been dismissed so many times before. The fear of professional consequences. They fear losing custody. They fear being targeted. They fear the abuser's connections. Silence becomes a survival strategy. And then there is identity erosion. When the abuser controls the narrative, the survivor begins to question their own reality. This is not just gaslighting. This is institutional gaslighting, reinforced by authority, paperwork, and procedure. When abusers in power are protected, the entire community is at risk. Because survivors stop reporting, children remain in unsafe homes, abusers rise in rank, the system loses credibility, violence becomes normalized, and silence becomes policy. A system that protects abusers cannot protect the public. Accountability must be structural, not symbolic. Independent reporting channels. Survivors need places to report that are not connected to the abuser's colleagues. Mandatory external reviews. Cases involving system-embedded abusers should be reviewed by outside agencies. Trauma-informed training. Professionals must understand coercive control, power-based abuse, institutional betrayal, survivor fear, manipulation tactics used by insiders. Protection for survivors who come forward. Survivors need anonymity options, legal support, safety planning, protection from retaliation, advocates trained in system-embedded abuse, and a cultural shift. Communities must stop assuming people in power don't do that, because some of them do, and when they do, the damage is multiplied. Domestic violence by people in power is not rare. It is simply hidden. Hidden behind badges, hidden behind robes, hidden behind titles, and hidden behind the myth that authority equals integrity. But survivors know the truth. Advocates know the truth. Communities are learning the truth. And the truth is this: power does not make someone safe. Power does not make someone honest. And power does not make someone incapable of abuse. When the abuser holds power, the survivor is not weak. They are outnumbered. And when we talk about domestic violence, we must talk about this too, because silence is the soil where abuse grows. And today we break that silence. Today we name the violence that hides behind authority. Today we say survivors deserve safety, even when the abuser wears power like armor, especially then. And the world must learn to listen.